welcome to Lunch and Learn. Good afternoon to you all. And for all of you watching on Facebook, come and hop along onto Zoom and join our fantastic live virtual studio audience, which this week we are delighted to welcome Joy. Give us a wave, Joy. There we go. So lovely to have you on board. Now, Rita very correctly pointed out that we're supposed to be taking a group selfie for the Forum magazine. So if you're happy to have your cameras on and to smile for the Shul magazine, then give us a lovely smile. Yeah, do your hair, do your makeup quickly, Paul. So all we need you to do is just look at your cameras and smile, and then when I find my, oh, there it is. Here we go. You ready? We're going to give this a try. Stanley, you giving us a smile? Is your camera frozen? Here we go, guys. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Okay, hopefully that is safe. Let me just test this out.
Josie wasn't showing her.
Yeah, Josie's cheating, but there we go. We'll Photoshop it. I'll take another screenshot of her at some point and then Photoshop it on. Maybe. Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll Photoshop it to make it look like there's 1,000 people on the screen. We'll figure something out. Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all. So the way Lunch and Learn works is we spend a couple of minutes talking about the parasha, and then we'll get into Pirkei Avot. And some lovely ethical discussions, although there is something that maybe I'll talk about first, seeing as so many of you have shared it. So here we go. Couple of words just on Parashat Va'era, the second parasha in the book of Shemot. We are still in Egypt. The Jews are slaves. Yeah, the Jews. I thought I just said the slaves are Jews for a second there. The Jews are slaves. The labor is backbreaking, but Moshe comes along with his brother Aaron, with Hashem right by his side, and the first 7 of 10 plagues appear in this week's parasha. So as we all know, the first 7 are blood, frogs, lies, yeah? So we've got dam, sfadea, kinim, arov, dever, Shin, Barad. That's it. So we've got blood and frogs and lice and wild beasts and the plague that wipes out the animals. We've got boils. We've got hail. It's all happening in this week's parasha, and it's the first 7. By the way, I'm sure I must have mentioned this before, but the first few plagues, blood, frogs, and lice, we're taught that it was Aaron who actually brought those plagues at God's instruction. It wasn't Moshe. Why wasn't it Moshe? And the answer that we're given is that in order to bring the plague of blood and frogs, he would have had to strike the river Nile. And in order to bring the plague of lice, he would have had to strike the ground. And both the river Nile and the ground had given Moshe refuge in his lifetime. The water had protected him as a baby, floating in the basket, and the ground had protected him from being discovered as the person who killed the Egyptian when he covered him up in the ground. So because he had been saved on account of the water and on account of the ground, he felt that he could not strike these things and afflict them to be able to bring about the plagues, which is a message and a lesson for all of us, that if Moses would show gratitude for inanimate objects like water and dust, anybody? Dust. If, no? Okay. Some of you may have got it. So if Moses could show gratitude to these inanimate objects, then how much more so do we have to show gratitude for our lovely friends and family and people that we encounter who do good deeds for us? How much more so must we show them gratitude, even many, many, many years after they may have done something? So Very important message there. Now, before we go into Pirkei Avot, a number of you have shared this video from one of my favorite rabbis. Paul, you have a question though before we go to that.
Yeah. Is there any explanation as to why the Jewish people were put into slavery in Egypt in the first place?
Yes.
I mean, the explanation they may grow very strong and be against this. Is that what we're putting down as the entire, to take the entire nation and make them slaves because of maybe someone having a filter?
You know, I'm doing research on this, preparing for my my series that I'm looking to develop based on my rabbi's lessons from way back when I was in yeshiva, and he's got the most amazing lessons on the Chumash, and seeing everything in depth and seeing the bigger, broader picture and the flow of history as the Torah presents it, and the repercussions and the spiritual impact that it has on the Jewish people throughout all of history. And very good, Gary. And so the reason ultimately, which needs loads and loads of depth being poured into it, but the reason that the Jewish people needed to be in Egypt is because they needed to encounter the culture of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, and the immorality and everything that went on there, and they needed to be in that pressure cooker, because ultimately it's what sows the seeds and paves the way for the great nation that the Jewish people can become. And it paves the way and it sows the seeds for everything that we as a nation need to accomplish and need to achieve throughout all of human history. So that's the answer in a nutshell, but it does absolutely nothing to actually give us the true depth of understanding that we perhaps need. But one day when we get there, we're going to see that everything that happens in the Torah is all about planting seeds and shaping the Jewish people into a nation that is destined for greatness, that is destined for connection, that is destined to bring the Mashiach, and everything like that. But we have to put way more content into that. So before we move on, let's just give Nova a chance to get connected, and let's greet her oh so warmly. Hello, Nova. I don't know if you can hear us. You're muted at the moment, so we can't hear you, but it's brilliant that you've managed to come back online today, so welcome. Okie dokie, guys. Before we go on to Pirkei Avot, you guys have all shared this video on Lunch and Learn groups and privately. That rabbi is one of my favorites. His name is Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, and you were sharing that message because he was talking about how important it is to not box people in and to not crush them with their Judaism. Was that the video, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a beautiful. It's a beautiful, powerful message. He is one of the people that I so enjoy listening to, and he's always banging this drum about giving people a chance to breathe with their Judaism, and how we can't just make everybody the same. So thank you very much for sharing that. And it actually reminded me of an idea that I forgot to share last week, which I learned from him, which is when Moses encounters the burning bush. And it says the burning bush did not burn the bush. It was on fire, but the bush was not being consumed. And Rabbi Jacobson says that the burning bush is an apt analogy for our spiritual existence, for our life as Jews, the passion and the enthusiasm that we're supposed to show for our Yiddishkeit, for the mitzvahs and for the good deeds that we do. We're supposed to be aflame. We are supposed to be on fire with enthusiasm and love for being Jewish. But he says it's not supposed to consume us. It's not supposed to torture us. It's not supposed to put us in pain. He says if it's consuming us and torturing us and putting us in pain, we're doing it wrong, which is amazing. The mitzvahs are not there to drag us down. The mitzvahs are not there to overcome us and weigh us down and make us miserable, make us feel imprisoned and restricted. They are supposed to set us free like the fire and set our souls on fire rather than consume us and burn us and drag us down. So that's a lovely message as well from Rabbi Jacobson.
Where's the video? Where is it?
Oh, it's I think Paul posted it earlier on the Lunch and Learn WhatsApp group.
I see. Thank you. I didn't see it.
So do check it out. Do check it out.
So can we join the group, please, Rabbi Nick?
Of course, we can join you to the group. We would be delighted to join you to the group. Fantastic. I'll do that, please God, after the session. Okie dokie, guys. So let's get the screen shared. Let's see today's nuggets. Everyone able to see that? Excellent. And I'm able to see that. And I'm able to see you. All right. So today in my book, we are on chapter 4, Mishnah 8. On the screen, I think we are on number 6. So only a short one to start with. So who's going to give us number 6 on the screen?
Right. Rabbi Yossi said, whoever honours the Torah is himself honoured by others, and whoever dishonours the Torah is himself dishonoured by others.
Very nice. Thank you very much indeed. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Kol HaMechabed es HaTorah. Whoever honours the Torah, Gufo Mechubad al Habrios. He himself will be honoured by people. V'chol HaMechalel es HaTorah. Anyone who disgraces and dishonours the Torah, he himself will be dishonoured and disgraced in the eyes of others. So these are concepts that perhaps we have spoken about before, but does anybody have anything that they want to throw in? I'm not anticipating that we'll spend the entire session talking about just these words, but you never know what might happen. By the way, are you still able to see the words, or can you now see a grey box? Brilliant.
Rabbi, when he uses the translation honours, I'm surprised they don't use translation of, say, study. Might be a more appropriate word. Can you place honour of Torah without fully studying it and becoming, like I said, a learned man of Torah?
It's an excellent question. What do people think?
I think honour is probably more than just studying, isn't it? It's understanding, carrying it out, etc., etc.
And respectful.
What is the Hebrew word for honors?
Mechabed. Can you see where it says Kol HaMechabed, Kibud. We say Kibud Av V'Eim, show honor to your father and mother.
Oh, I see. Yes.
So kavod. When we show kavod to something, we show it with respect. We show it honor, and we have to understand what that means. So Paul says that it means studying the Torah. I think Howard was saying that it means showing respect to the Torah. So how would you define that?
Well, I think it would be respect for the Jewish laws and observance, not necessarily studying it, but respect for it.
Okay. Howard, how would you define your words of respecting the Torah?
Respecting is having, being in awe of it, being able to live by it and respect what God is said by it, and that other people will respect you for doing right, really, telling you to do right. Are you doing right? That's how I would think holding it in respect would be.
Beautiful.
I think it has a little element of love as well.
Ooh.
Whoever loves the Torah.
Beautiful.
It means something really deep to them.
That is wonderful. So the good news is, 1 second, Rita. Sorry.
Well, no, it's okay. So you want to talk about? I'm just thinking, if you're a mensch and you study Torah and you do the right things, people will honor you as well.
So this is a good question as well, Rita. What would honouring you be?
It's like honoring your parents, isn't it? Being kind, being good. I don't know, help your parents and look after them if they need them. You know, that sort of.
So if we show respect to the Torah, then other people will do those things for us, or
They will respect you by doing it as well.
Is there an element of teaching here? Because it says, is himself honoured by others. You teach, you also
teaching just standing in a classroom, or teaching just by showing the right example?
I think your second point is good, showing example. Yeah.
Paul, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, I think this is much, much deeper.
Oh.
I think this refers to what I put on earlier, where you talk about someone who has their inheritance, as opposed to learning of the Torah, and the honor is very much not about learning. One who has their inheritance for, as they said in the video, it was about you were Jewish enough for Dr. Mengele to send you, then you're Jewish enough for me. It isn't about studying the Torah. It's about having derech eretz for the Torah, yes, and for all Jews, and having space for Jews. I think this actually, what the rabbi here is saying, is much, much deeper than what it looks like on the first reading.
So the good news is that you've all been correct. Just before we move on, is anyone else trying to say anything? I'm trying to keep my eyes on all the devices at once. But...
I think the phrase "as you sow, so you reap" comes to bear.
Okay.
We all know people who. It's not only a question of practice, because people do what they feel comfortable with, and that's what they should do. But we know people who ridicule, and they're the people, I think, in the last part, we dishonoured. It's not that we don't understand people who find it difficult to observe, because there are many people who genuinely are good people and find it very difficult to accept some of the laws and rules that we abide by. But they don't disrespect the Torah. They have respect for it. But there are people who do disrespect it, and they're two different types of people.
Very good. So in almost all of the examples that we've given, in fact, I think almost all of the examples that we've given, someone somewhere interprets the words in those ways. So it is much deeper than just a superficial level of studying the Torah. There is the straightforward explanation, which is we show honor to the Torah by studying it. That's true. But there are so many other layers to understanding this as well. There's showing respect to the Torah scrolls and to scholars and students. And how might we do that? So we stand up when they come into the room, right? When we open the Ark on a Shabbat morning, or during the week on Monday, Thursday, back in the day when we could go to shul, right? So we open the Ark, we're seeing our Torah scrolls before us, and what do we all do? Start talking. Yeah, we all stand up out of respect for the Torah scrolls. We decorate them beautifully. We put jewelry on them. We put expensive clothes on our Torah. Granted, it's just the kind of velvet, don't know what you'd call it, Torah cover, mantle. But the point is that we are showing respect and valuing and treasuring something that's very, very important to us. So we put the bells on it so that when people hear those bells, they know, oh my gosh, the Torah's coming. We have to stop talking and give it respect and pay attention. So that's another way. When a great Torah scholar like yourselves come into the room, so we stand up for the rabbi or whoever it might be.
And the Torah get kissed as well, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend kissing your rabbi, but that's right. We kiss the Torah because it's something that we treasure. It's something that we love. It's something that we respect. So why do we stand for a rabbi? It's not because they've got a really long beard. It's not because they are deserved of respect. It's because they embody something that is deserved of respect. They are the walking, living, breathing embodiment of the Torah and Hashem's wisdom, and that's why we stand up for them. So that's another way in which we show respect, and that means that the way that we talk about our rabbis as well is an indication of how much respect we show to the Torah. There's other things as well. We don't put the Torah on the same level as someone sitting. Right? It's always got to be kept somewhat elevated, which is why when the person does Hagba and then sits down, they don't put the Torah next to them and then just kind of sit back and relax. That would be disrespectful to the Torah to have it on the same seat as someone else sitting down. So the guy continues to hold the Torah, and we don't just do that with our Torah scrolls. We do that as well with our books, with our Sidurim, with our Chumashim. We don't sit on them. We don't put them on our chairs next to us. We don't put them on the floor. It's all part of this concept of giving respect to the Torah. We don't even put books on top of each other unless they are ranked correctly. So Chumash is in some ways more holy than a Siddur. So we won't put a Siddur on top of a Chumash, but we can put a Chumash on top of a Siddur. We wouldn't put our newspaper on top of our Siddur, but we can put our Siddur on top of the newspaper. We wouldn't put, Rabbi Sax's Covenant and Conversation on top of a Siddur or on top of a Chumash, but we can put the Chumash and the Siddur on top of Rabbi Sax's Covenant and Conversation. So there's a hierarchy to the way in which even we would pile up our books. And I remember when I was studying in yeshiva that somebody had put whatever book it was on top of a Tanakh, on top of a big, thick volume of all of the Torah, all of the Bible. And Rav Nevensal, who was the spiritual head of the yeshiva in his 80s, he dove across the study hall to be able to correct the incorrect way that they had been put on top, because he had such a sensitivity for the honor of the Torah that when he saw it out of place, he literally jumped out of his seat to go and fit. He didn't just say, hey, can you possibly just flip that over? He went and did it himself because of his duty and his, respect for the Torah. However, we all have respect for him. So when he stood up to dive, we all stood up because we thought he was standing. So it was a funny one, that one. So what else would we do or not do? Even if our books are upside down, we're supposed to correct them and turn them the right way up. It's all part of giving honor and respect to the Torah. Give you another one. Ready for this one? Let's see how this one flies. Cover your ears, everyone on Facebook. So giving respect to the Torah means that when the Torah is out and we're reading from the Torah and we're laning, we're supposed to do that without talking. We're supposed to give due concentration and due respect while the Torah is being read publicly. That's also part of honoring and respecting the Torah. What else? Maimonides says it's an eagerness to live by its teachings. It's at least the commitment and the desire even to understand that the teachings of the Torah are part of our lives. Another commentator, the Tiferet Yisrael, says that it means taking care of our books, taking care of our Jewish books, taking care of our Jewish items, returning them after use, not just leaving them scattered around. This is all part of having respect. So I guess another layer of it would be buying Jewish books and having these things in our home. Maybe that also shows respect and honor for the Torah when we show what is important and we have it as our priority in life to connect to it. So ultimately, what I feel emerges from these words is that actually, when you are giving honor to the Torah in any of these ways, whether it's studying it, whether it's treating our teachers with respect the way that we talk to them, the way that we talk about them, whether it's our conduct when it comes to our holy books, whatever it might be, what we're revealing is what we're really feeling on the inside. And that's, I think, what this is all about. In your essence, in your core, are you demonstrating and are you radiating a respect for the Torah and a respect for Hashem? I think that's really what comes out of it. Are we people who will sit there and speak unkindly about Jewish figures and about the Torah and about the episodes in the Torah? Will we have an element of disrespect in the way that we talk, in the way that we act, in the way that we conduct ourselves around the Torah? Or are we revealing that in our essence and what's going on inside of us and what makes us tick is actually a respect for what it's all about? Where do our priorities lie? I think that's really what this is getting to the crux of. Anybody who honors the Torah, anybody who radiates a feeling of pride and a feeling of connection and a feeling of honoring of our religion, of our practice, of our values, of our scriptures, so in the eyes of others, we will be respected. When we are radiating, taking these things seriously, however it actually manifests itself, but in the fact that we become polite, caring, considerate, our lives are matched inside and outside by a modicum of respect for the Torah, and that endears us in the eyes of others. But if we are insensitive, if we are callous, if we mock our practices, if we mock the Torah, if we don't take these things seriously, if we have a very I'm sure there's other fantastic words and adjectives that I could think of, but the point is that if our core, if our essence is one where we are just ashamed of our Torah, we mock it, we ridicule it, whatever it might be, so really in the eyes of others, people will sense that, people will notice that, and people lose, or at least on a broad sweeping basis, people lose respect if we don't have respect for Judaism. I was always taught that people will be proud of people who are proud. Meaning when the non-Jewish world sees us being proud of our religion, then actually in the non-Jewish world they'll respect that more because we are standing up for what we believe, we're proud of what we believe, and that actually in the eyes of others makes them respect us. Whereas if we have got no consideration and no passion and no feeling of connection to our Judaism, then sometimes in the non-Jewish world they don't really get that. So that's I think that's everything in a nutshell for this one. But let's see if anybody... Yeah, Joe, you've got a comment. And welcome, David. Hello. We're going to have to do another selfie at the end. So we've got 16 people on. Goodness me. Where have you all come from? Philip Norman, Jeff Rubenstein. Gosh, hello. Fantastic. So yeah, anybody got some comments before we move on?
I'm just going to say about respect, I don't know if you know, but in Sephardi families, when the father is reading from the Torah, the son stands up the whole time he's reading. Yeah,
I had that custom as well. Anytime my dad would get called up, and I was in shul, obviously, I would stand up for that. And we do that when a rabbi gets called up as well, we're supposed to. We're even, by the way, I can't believe I forgot to mention this, we're even supposed to do that when an elderly person gets called up, even if they're not a rabbi, because they embody a certain amount of wisdom. We are supposed to rise and stand up for elderly people. How different is that from the way that the world is, where people often put aside the elderly community? You know, what could they possibly teach us now? Whereas in Judaism, someone who has a lived a long life is presumed to be someone who has accumulated a lifetime of wisdom and is deserved of respect. We're even supposed to stand up when our parents come in the room, whether they're getting called up or not. That's also part of the respect. We're also supposed to make sure not to sit in their seat, because the same concept. In the same way that no one would dare go and sit in Rabbi Feldman's seat, we're according to the strictest rules, we're not supposed to sit in our parents' seats.
That's what I was just going to say. It always reminded me with my dad. Never sat on his seat.
There you go.
Never. When he died, when he passed away, my mum said, "You can sit there now," and I wouldn't.
It's all part of this concept. It's not just because they as an individual are deserved of respect, but it's because of what they represent, everything that they've given you, everything that that you are because of them. David, you are muted. We cannot hear you, sir. We couldn't hear you, David. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Good. So all these laws that you've just enumerated, presumably, we would find them listed in the Shulchan Aruch.
We would.
Yeah.
We would.
Thank you.
They are coded for posterity in the code of Jewish law. Absolutely. And a parent would have to literally verbalize foregoing of these levels of respect. Without it, we shouldn't do it. Unless the parent says, "Oh, I'm okay with you sitting in my seat." We're not supposed to refer to our parents by our first name, by their first name. I mean, I remember when I learned this for the first time. I think I learned this from Rabbi Tatz actually at the JLE. He said, when you give your name in shul, if you're being given a call up and they say, "What's your name?" So in the case of my name, I should say Yitzchak ben Reb Raphael. So as not, even though my dad doesn't go by that name usually, that's only his Hebrew name that's reserved for special occasions. But even then, one should be careful and one should give a degree of respect to their parent, even when giving their Hebrew name. That is why, by the way, when I got married, I asked for my talis bag to have my Hebrew name embroidered onto it, so that if I'm ever in shul and someone asks for my Hebrew name, I can just point at the talis bag, and then they then it avoids those issues. So yeah, there we go. Gotta have respect.
I think this is going much deeper than that, Rob. Because as I've said, there are many people who don't necessarily disrespect the Torah, and would stand as we would do in shul or wear a kippah. But we do know people who walk in who won't wear a kippah, and it's disrespectful. They may not believe it, they may not feel it in their bones, but they are the sort of people who I believe we're talking about when they say disrespect. I had, when I was in Round Table, there were a number of Jewish men by birth who kept no Torah. However, they did have a respect, because when I had special meals brought in, and they did as well. There was one who wouldn't, and they didn't respect him. That was most amazing. They had respect for the men who actually didn't observe laws outside, but because I was there, they had their kosher meals brought in. And when we saw one of our ex-Labour leaders eating a bacon sandwich, I think he lost a tremendous amount of respect. Although he identified as an atheist, everybody knew he was of Jewish birth. And he disrespected the Torah, to my mind, by eating that ridiculous bacon sandwich. In Jewish honor. Well, it was all over the paper. Yeah.
I think ultimately we have to appreciate as well, and we have to be a bit sensitive that there has to be a level of consciousness that we're talking about here. if someone is disrespecting the Torah out of an absence of connection, not having had the right upbringing, not having had the exposure, not having really much of a clue about the significance or the severity of what inappropriate actions might be, that's completely different than somebody who has got the knowledge and has got the background and is consciously trying to, stoke the coals through his disrespect.
Well, I don't know any Jewish person who's say once removed or even twice, who doesn't understand some of the basic principles. And whereas they may not, in my mind, want to observe them or able to observe them because of conscience or anything, they lack respect when they purposely do things they know would be upsetting in front of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is also just as important, to show respect. When I walk into a church, which I used to have to do occasionally, I know some people say you shouldn't, but for certain things, I wouldn't purposely keep my hat on. Now, you may think that's wrong, I don't know, but out of respect for their way of doing things, I would behave the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
And when I expect non-Jewish people to walk into a synagogue, I expect them to cover their heads. And I object when a Jewish person walks in and refuses. Mm-hmm. I find it quite insulting.
Joy, you had your hand up?
Yes, I did. I was looking at this, and it seems to now be very much about physical respect. Talking about and learning, which I think is very much men orientated. And so, if you forgive me as a woman, honouring the Torah is, as I said before, something about loving it and wanting to carry Judaism around and teach others and just be the sort of person, a good person, a respectful person, and someone who does go by the laws of Torah, but not, obviously we can't, not physically learning. Well, we can learn, but not with the scroll or anything like that. And I know this was all written by men many, many, many years ago and everything, but as a woman, I take from it this sort of emotional context.
I think it's all part and parcel, and that's why I was keen to say that it's really about revealing your inner essence. It's really about the attitude that you have, the positive attitude, or perhaps the disdainful attitude that a person has. It permeates and it radiates in our actions. And I mean, you're right in some respects, but perhaps also it's not just about it being a man-oriented world. Women still stand in shul when the Torah is out. Women, we still would have the same expectation to stand for their rabbi, to stand for their parents. These are not things that only would apply to men.
Yeah.
But I certainly I can what's the word? I can sympathize when it comes to the physical holding of the Torah and things like that. That might be more men oriented, but women still have chumashim. They still have Jewish books. The respect and the honor that we give to those is still just as much on the women as it is for men. And ultimately, it's about in some ways the emotional connection that we have is just as important, if not more important. Ultimately, we have to, the way in which we teach or lead by example is the way in which people around us would absorb. If we are passionate, others around us will tap into that passion and will benefit from that passion. So it is all part and parcel. David,
So something slightly controversial.
Always. It's what we've missed, David.
Thank you. So if you say, it says, for example, in the Shulchan Aruch, you should stand up in the room when your parents enter the room. That would apply both to your father and your mother.
Right.
Yes? Yes?
Right.
When we get called up to the Torah, we neglect the mother completely.
Mm-hmm.
We only say the father's name. What? I've got a father and a mother. So when I'm called up to the Torah, why am I called up as David ben Shlomo Vasara, for example?
Don't you know this about Judaism, that we don't care about women?
Come on.
And it's a chauvinist religion. Okay, it's a fair question. I'm sure there's a logic to it. And yeah, I'm happy to give that one some thought.
But we
It's
call
almost
ourselves by our father.
Don't you think it's unfair, David, that if a person is ill, that we pray for them in the name of their mother? Don't you think that's a bit sexist, David?
I think you should pray for them in the name of their mother and their father.
Oh.
But I'm called Martin Moss in the English world, in the secular world, and it's my father's name. I'm not called Martin Weinberg.
Is that?
There had to be something. I mean, you know, you can't go on forever.
Do you reckon that the adoption of the father's surname comes from the fact that we would trace lineages through the father rather than the mother?
No, I thought in Judaism we trace lineage through the mother because we know who the mother is. There's no guarantee who the father is.
Well, we trace our Jewish identity through the mother, but lineages would always be through the father. Joy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I did. It's just women. I know my Hebrew name is Gila Bat Menachem Varivka. So is it women who use their mother's name as well?
It's always important for us to know who what our parents' names are. But on your ketubah, it will be, I would imagine, just your father's name on the ketubah. On the K2 system, on our shul database, we might have both. I'm not sure, but no, it's a fair point, and I need to get you a good answer. Joe?
I just wanted to ask, and I know there are times when we do use the mother's name. What are they?
Well,
Health.
for praying for someone's health.
There are only for health. There are instances I know when we say bust, whatever, you know, not.
Yeah. When it's interesting when you name a child, so you'll name it the child, the son or daughter of the father. But when you then pray for the health of that child, you would have it as the son or daughter of the mother. So within the same ceremony, you get both in there. But as I said, I'll try and come up with a good answer rather than just make stuff up off the top of my head. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So let's have a little look if we can get some insights into this next one. Then why not? Let's try and get into. Look at that, a twofer, two for the price of one. And if we haven't done so already, let's single out a big warm lunch and learn welcome to Philip Norman. Give us a wave. He's brave enough to have his camera on over there, and it's lovely to have you on board as well, sir. All right, so who's going to read for us? What are we on now? Number 7.
I'll do that. Rabbi Ishmael, his son, said, "He who refrains himself from judgment rids himself of enmity, robbery, and false swearing. But he whose heart is presumptuous in giving a judicial decision is foolish, wicked, and arrogant."
So another very flowery translation from our Safaria website over here, which doesn't necessarily make things any easier for us. Rabbi Ishmael Beno, Omer. So Rabbi Ishmael, it's actually Rabbi Ishmael Bar Chalafta, who was a student of Rabbi Yossi, who we've just had, I think. Did I write that right? Yeah, of Rabbi Yossi. Fantastic. So what does he say? Ha-choshech atzmo min hadin, which is interesting. Oh, sorry, ha-chosech. My apologies. I was just going to say there's must be a connection there between darkness and this word. Ha-chosech atzmo min hadin, one who withdraws from judgment or refrains himself from judgment. I guess takes himself out of a position of needing to judge. Porek mimenu, then he will rid himself and will remove from himself feelings of eva, gazel, ushavuas shav, feelings of hatred, the potential for robbery, for theft, and the potential for false oaths, unnecessary oaths. V'hagas libo b'hora'ah, somebody who is too self-confident in their legal prowess, in their ability to give judicial decisions, legal decisions. He is a shota, a rasha, v'gas ruach. He is a fool. He is wicked and arrogant of spirit. So one can't escape the feeling that this Mishnah is very much directed at people who are actual judges. But let's try and also see if we can look at this from an angle of us as well in the 21st century. That's not how you spell century. Century. What do we think, guys?
It's a bit harsh. We need Rabbonim, we need Dayanim to judge.
Yeah.
We need judges to judge.
But what are we looking for? That's the real question.
But you need someone with a certain amount of humility.
Very
to
good.
be a judge.
Yeah. I think the judges, what it means is the judges are really stuck up or above us, or thinking they're it.
That's it. We don't want that.
No, we don't want that.
We don't want people pinging on their braces saying, "Look at me," when you're coming before them.
I think so, I don't know.
We've seen statements in our Pirkei Avot here of being diligent in ruling and being patient and being cautious with words and all these kinds of ideas. And ultimately, when we put a rabbi, however learned, however impressive, however old, however wise, when we put these people into positions of power and into positions of trust, we need them to not abuse that power. We need them to not be so overconfident in themselves that it ends up having a detrimental impact. From the flip side, there seems to have been over the last, I don't know, however many decades, a tendency that as soon as disagreements crop up, the slightest hint of disagreement, and people are ending up in court, whether it's in a din Torah, whether it's in front of Jewish judges, or whether they go straight to non-Jewish courts, there definitely seems to be this prevalence in society that when something is going wrong, you want to rip them to shreds and sue them for every penny, and take them to the cleaners. And this mission is really heavily cautioning against that propensity, that temptation to take things to such a drastic place.
But isn't a rabbi isn't a judge meant to judge? That's what he's there for.
So that's the interesting thing, isn't it? A judge is supposed to be capable of judging, but actually, wherever possible, we are encouraged in Judaism to try and reach a compromise and settlements outside of having to go to a full-blown rabbinic court trial, or even in a secular court trial. And if we are able to avoid such litigation, then we will be sparing ourselves from potentially unnecessary levels of hatred, unnecessary levels of animosity, will be able to minimize the aggravation physically, emotionally, mentally. We'll be able to avoid all of the other costs, physical and monetary, that come about through big court cases. We'll be able to remove the temptation of people feeling like they have to make false claims or lie under oath, or cheat or steal. And this Shavuas Shav that we mentioned in the Mishnah will prevent the necessity of people having to take oaths if we're able to settle outside of a court trial. People won't have to swear that they are in the right or that they are in the wrong, whatever it might be. We avoid all of these things, and we know the lengths that people can go to try and win a case, and the corruption that could end up manifesting itself. So these are all the things that get avoided, and this is what our mission is saying, that if you're able to not make everything go to a trial, then you remove the potential for the hatred, for the animosity. You remove the potential for the robbery, for the cheating, for the wrongful allocation of a verdict, and you remove the need for potential unnecessary oaths and invalid oaths and Chilul Hashem, desecrating God's name. That all gets avoided by trying to solve these things outside of a trial. And on top of that, we seem to have as well, I'm guilty of this the whole time, we will stick to our guns because of the principle of the thing. It's the principle of the thing. That's why I'm going through with all of this. That's why I'm continuing with all of this. It's the principle of the thing. And those are such dangerous words when we do things because it's the principle of the thing. And we never, court cases aside, disagreements and domestic arguments and domestic conversations where we refuse to back down because it's the principle of the thing. And I know that I'm right. And I remember learning a very, very important phrase a number of years ago, which is, even if you're right, you're wrong. Meaning that just because you may have the right attitude, the right opinion, you may have done things correctly, whatever it is, if there's so much that it's going to cost you just to prove that you're right, and that works on every single level of disagreement and every single level of dispute. If you have to prove that you're right, and it comes at the cost of fractured relationships, fractured friendships, not talking to family members anymore, you might not actually be right. Do we really need to put so much on the line just for the principle of the thing, just because you're right? Those are the nuggets that really penetrate into every area, not just a judge, not just a litigant, whatever it might be. Paul.
It says here that Rabbi Ishmael was the son of Rabbi Yossi. And could it not be read that actually what Rabbi Ishmael is saying should be read directly after what Rabbi Yossi said? Because whoever honors the Torah himself is honored, etc., etc. But you should think very carefully about judging the issue of whether that person honors the Torah or not. It's the judgment of that person I was reading into the second one. Mm-hmm. Not if it was an explanation of how to be a judge, which works perfectly well, don't have a problem with it, I think it would be slightly different. I'm not sure that this is about how to be a judge at all. I think this is how to read what my dad said, Rabbi Yosef, and be jolly careful about standing up and saying, because he doesn't do the same as you, that he may be dishonoring the Torah. Don't make a decision until you've walked in his shoes.
I love what you're saying. I'm not sure that we have to say that the other explanations are completely irrelevant, but I definitely love what you're saying, and I think that's a hugely powerful lesson as well.
Stanley, am I still on? Is Stanley still on?
Yep.
Yeah.
We can hear you, Stanley.
You would think in serious cases they should ever be decided by one human being. In other words, if it's serious, it should go to a panel or whatever you like to call it, but not one human being.
So I can't comment on secular law, although we do have models in secular law which do go to a panel of judges. But the Jewish model would have had a based in three rabbinic judges sitting there, not just one, and 100%. Yeah, it's whether it was a based in of 3 or a based in of 71. There are so many laws and measures in place to ensure a fair and balanced trial. So yeah, 100% Stanley. Thank you.
I read this a different way too. I mean, what you were saying is obviously how it should be when you do see in cases where people lie or think they're telling the truth when they know really well they're not, just to win a case. But I didn't see this as looking at the liturgy. I saw this as looking at people who don't run to become a judge and don't be presumptuous in giving judicial decisions. I didn't see it as looking at the participants, but as the judge themselves.
Well, so does Rabbeinu Yonah. There are rabbis who go into greater depth in the area that you're talking about, and there's a concept that if you as a judge know that there's someone who's more competent than you would be in a particular area, then one should confidently hand over the responsibility to them. But I think that's something that applies in all areas as well, which is that we should always submit to people with greater expertise.
I mean, they do it in the House of Commons when they appoint a new speaker. He has to pretend to be reluctant to take the chair. They have to push him towards it.
Right.
I think I read it as on an everyday basis, because every day, that's how I read it, and every day we all make judgments, and someone who holds himself back from making a judgment or prejudging, then he, gets rid of the hatred, the robbery, the swearing, whatever, but he can think more reasonably, more logical, and there's no hatred, no nastiness, and he can make a considered view on things. And whereas somebody who jumps to immediately jumps at the situation, then they're the ones that are judicially, they're foolish and arrogant. And I just thought, well, I wish that people thought about this when it comes to social media, because this is just exactly what happens, unfortunately, the way social media is developed. In that people do jump immediately, and people are crucified, on the expression, on social media, and when they shouldn't be,
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening today.
I mean, if we're going to put ourselves into 100%, if we're going to put ourselves into a self-appointed judge status, then we should pay attention to what the Talmud says about judges. The Talmud says that a judge should always view himself as if a sword rests on his neck and Gehenna and hell is open beneath him, meaning that if we're going to make ourselves into judges, we have to be so careful with what we do, with what we say, how we wield our power and our influence. We're supposed to come from a place of humility rather than arrogance and haughtiness and not being too sure of ourselves. And that will apply to a judge of any status in any field, even a self-appointed Twitter judge or Facebook judge. I would wholeheartedly agree with you there, sir. Most certainly. Beautiful. Rita.
Can you just explain in very, very simple English what this means? Stay with your own rabbi, stay with your own judgment, stay with us, or I don't really understand what he's trying to say, really.
I'll try and paraphrase it in a way that can encapsulate everything.
Yeah.
Because as I said, there's a very clear line that it's talking about a judge. But as Howard pointed out, we all judge. We all
Are we
judge.
all judges? Are we all judges?
That's the very way in which we seem to lead our lives. As Howard says, like we've all got an opinion on something, and we all talk with an air of expertise. And when I say we all, I obviously mean to exclude all of you on the screen, but me and everybody else, we all judge, and we all
Very humble, Rabbi. Very humble.
we all show our opinions on things and all the rest of it. So if you wanted to distill it into an idea that encapsulates the legal element and encapsulates what Howard was talking about as well, the point is that if you don't judge, if you don't constantly exert your authority in every which way, then you will avoid a lot of problems in life.
Yeah.
That
You understand a bit better. So basically, everybody, all human beings are judges, really, because we're all not judges.
just by the very nature of the way we interact with each other,
Yeah.
and all the rest of it. If we are overly confident in exerting our authority, in judging people too quickly, then the Mishnah is saying we could end up looking foolish. We could end up even being so far as to be considered as a wicked person, and arrogant. These are all things that we want to steer clear of.
I took it as a judge, I mean, somebody who's judging other people in court. That's what I thought, but now I understand it better.
There are definitely ways of interpreting this to make it relevant for all of us who don't sit on a court bench. There's always lessons for life. Okay, Joy?
Yeah, I actually thought exactly the same as Howard. I mean, I could see that could have been about a professional judge. But because Pirkei Avot teaching us how to live our lives and things like that, then it would be that it's everybody's quick to jump to judgment and criticise, and I think this is lovely. It really, really talks to me how it's said.
Amazing. Thank you. Any last comments from Philip? We should have given you the right of the floor first as a Kohen.
Well, it's very kind of you, but I'm a long way away from Bush at the moment.
Oh, are you in Israel?
Yeah, been there for a month.
Oh, you're so lucky.
Well, Israel.
Fantastic.
I've just been listening, and it's very nice.
Oh, I'm so pleased that you've tuned in. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to say goodbye to everyone on Facebook, and you can come and join us for the after party on Zoom. We've still got 10 minutes before Mincha starts on the Zoom stream, so we'll sign off for now on Facebook and YouTube. Wish you all a wonderful, meaningful day. Apologies, I've just noticed that we've not had the words on the screen, but the fact that no one's commented means no one's been watching, so that's all right. Take care, everyone. Bye.